Exposed, spine-chilling secrets of a cursed small town, 7 terrifying hauntings revealed. In the quaint town of Briar Hollow, everything looks peaceful. Yet, beneath its charming facade lies a dark history that whispers of missing residents, unsettling occurrences, and a chilling sense of foreboding. Sarah, a 32-year-old mother, thought moving here with her husband Mark and their 2 children would be the fresh start they desperately needed. Instead, she found herself enveloped in an oppressive atmosphere, an unseen weight pressing down on her as she unpacked boxes in their old home. Mark's late returns from the factory felt like a harbinger of doom. The way he spoke in hushed tones about the town's disappearances gripped Sarah with icy fingers. There was something wrong, something lurking between the shadows of the ancient trees surrounding their new home. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach, a gnawing sense that the idyllic life she envisioned was slipping away. As twilight descended, shadows danced across the walls, erasing the warmth of her dreams. A soft rustle outside the window sent chills down her spine. She turned her head quickly, only to catch a dark blur vanishing into the woods. She couldn't shake the feeling that Briar Hollow was suffocating under layers of secrets. And Mrs. Maple, with her hawk-like gaze and unsettling cookies, only added fuel to the fire of her growing anxiety. Why did she watch Sarah so closely, as if she were waiting for a signal, a cue to strike? Then the stories emerged, the 7 hauntings tied to homes that lined their street. The articles dripped with tales of gone but not forgotten, each one a reminder that Briar Hollow's history was not just dusty, but sinister. With every word she read, Sarah's pulse quickened. She fought against those tales, but they clawed at her mind, whispering fears she couldn't ignore. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. That evening, as she rocked her youngest to sleep, a rhythmic tapping at the window broke through the stillness. Heart racing, she glanced over, her breath hitching. The darkness outside felt alive, threatening to swallow her whole. Memories flashed of the last known locations of the missing residents, the familiar road that led into the thick woods behind their house. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and dread tightened around her like a vice. Silence filled the room, heavy and choking, causing her children to stir. Then, a car came barreling down the street, headlights slicing through the night. For a brief moment, a figure stood illuminated before vanishing into the gloom. It hit her hard. A primal instinct to protect her children surged within her. What was she getting into? The neighborhood whispers twisted in her mind as she moved to grab her phone, desperation flooding her. The shadows around her felt like dark tendrils reaching for what was still hers. Out there, in the creeping darkness of Briar Hollow, something sinister lurked, waiting. Would they become the next names echoing in those chilling articles? As dread flooded her thoughts, she couldn't help but wonder, were they the latest victims in this town's cursed history? Time was running out, and the haunting was far from over. A cold gust of wind rattled the windowpane, drawing Sarah's gaze back to the world outside. She swallowed hard, her throat dry as she tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. Was it just her imagination, or was there something lurking in that darkness, something that sensed her fear? The rhythmic taps continued, growing more insistent as though urging her to confront whatever was hidden in the shadows. "Mommy?" A tiny voice piped up from the crib, pulling her back to the present. Ben, her youngest, blinked sleepily at her. The innocence in his eyes cut through the suffocating dread, but it was fleeting. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," she whispered, forcing herself to give a reassuring smile. She had to protect him, protect them all. But deep down, she felt a gnawing fear that her instincts might lead her astray. As she tucked the blanket tighter around Ben, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The brief moment of distraction jolted her, and she hurried over to check. It was a message from Mark, stuck at work. Be home late. Love you. The words felt like a death sentence. The pit in her stomach deepened, and she glanced at the clock. It was past 10, and she could hear the unsettling rustle growing outside, almost rhythmic, syncopated to her pulse. Her heart raced as she debated whether to call her husband. On the one hand, she didn't want to burden him with her fears. On the other hand, the weight of the town's whispers felt heavy in her chest. What if the stories were true? A sharp scream shattered the stillness like glass, a shriek that seemed to echo from the woods. It wasn't human. Sarah's blood ran cold. Adrenaline coursed through her veins and she felt the adrenaline pulse in her ears. Mommy! Ben cried again, the terror evident in his voice. She rushed back to the crib, clutching him close, her body trembling. Fear wrapped around her like a vice. She forced herself to breathe, to think, what could it be? Gathering her resolve, she turned to the window, peeking through the drapes. The moonlight illuminated the dense shadows, and just beyond the tree line, something flickered for a moment, pale, ghastly, almost like a hand reaching out, beckoning her. Mommy, look. Ben pointed, his small finger trembling. She followed his gaze, and horror froze her in place. Emerging from the very darkness that had been haunting her all evening was a figure, a woman, draped in a tattered dress, her long hair cascading like a waterfall of shadows. Help me! The voice drifted on the wind, chilling Sarah to the bone. It wasn't just the sight, it was the pleading tone that filled the room with palpable dread. The figure swayed, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. Stay back! Sarah shouted, pulling Ben against her chest. But he lifted his small hand to the window, entranced. The apparition took a tentative step toward the house, whispering names, lost names, victims of the lore that had haunted the town for generations. Names Sarah had read about. Every tale of sorrow seeped into the corners of her mind, and she understood with terrifying clarity, these were not just stories. The people in Briar Hollow lived in fearful reverence of the past, and now that past had come calling. The lights flickered again, a malevolent dance, and as they dimmed, Sarah felt the air turn frigid, the darkness pressing in on all sides. She pressed her phone tight, contemplating calling for help, but the stories of the town's vanishing residents echoed in her thoughts. What if help never arrived? Suddenly, the tapping returned, but now it was at the back door, a rapid, frantic drumming. One sound pulled her focus, one dread igniting her blood with terror. And through it all, one thought devoured her mind: who or what had come to take them next? The rhythm of whatever haunted Briar Hollow was not done yet, and their time was running thin. Ben's little hand still reached toward the window, enchanted by the figure's mournful plea. In stark contrast, dread coiled tighter in Sarah's chest, the instinct to protect boiling over. Ben, come here! She cried, pulling him close, feeling his small body shake with unspoken anxiety. But her eyes couldn't tear away from the specter outside. The woman's features were obscured, her gaze piercing through the layers of fear like fresh blades of cold steel. Something in her posture reminded Sarah of the stories, of the lost souls that wandered these woods, forever seeking solace, or perhaps revenge. The tapping intensified, making her jump. It was as if something or someone was trying to break through the back door, desperate for entry. Mommy, I want to see. Ben whined, obvious excitement conflicting sharply with the terror thick in the air. No. You stay with me. The words came out sharper than intended, but the panic behind them was undeniable. She glanced around the dimly lit room, feeling trapped. The walls whispered secrets of the past, pressing in on her sanity. Was she losing her mind? Or was this all real? The cold draft shifted again, bringing with it a faint whisper, "Help me!" It echoed inside her skull, a relentless chant tormenting her. Was it the woman? Or were there more hidden voices, trapped in the darkness outside, reaching out for her? A vivid jolt of terror ignited inside her. She couldn't let Ben see her fear a mother's resolve must endure. "Stay quiet, honey. Let me check," Sarah whispered, cradling Ben tighter and inching silently toward the hallway that led to the rear door. Each creak of the floorboard sounded like thunder in the suffocating silence, sending shivers down her spine. What if she opened that door? As she neared, she could hear the taps morph into frantic banging. Was it alive? Or was it the spirits of those forgotten in the whispers of the wind? Desperation clawed at her, pushing her forward even as she fought against it. With trembling hands, she reached for the doorknob. Just a quick glance, she promised herself. She had to know. An overpowering need to confront whatever was clawing at their peace took hold. As she placed her palm on the cold metal, a sudden chill wrapped around her like icy fingers. The room darkened, shadows stretching unnaturally. Every nerve screamed at her to turn back, but the idea that both she and Ben were in danger drove her to twist the knob. The door swung open with an ominous creak. The darkness outside swallowed her whole. "Mommy." Ben's voice cut through the chasm of fear, pulling her back slightly. She glanced at him, eyes wide with terror. "Stay close," she whispered, stepping into the night. The air was heavy. The shadows shifted and swayed, like dark phantoms closing in. She focused ahead, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Shapes coalesced where they shouldn't have been, twisting and curling at the edges of her perception. Without warning, a gust rushed past her, kicking up leaves and scattering the darkness. A horrid rasping sound clawed at the air. Not human, something worse. Her heart raced, and everything inside her screamed to flee, yet her feet were cemented to the ground. Then she saw it, a flicker at the edge of the trees. A shift that made her blood run cold. Just as she turned to drag Ben away, she heard it again, the voice, clearer now but filled with malice. "Help me," was now accompanied with an echoing laughter, a cruel mockery in the night. Suddenly, the profound realization crashed over her. The woman wasn't just looking for aid, she was calling forth the lost souls, and they were gathering at her heels. "What did you do?" A whispered voice snaked around her ear, suffocating and merciless as shadows twisted and lunged toward her. And in that chilling moment, Sarah realized wasn't just a hope for help but a sinister invitation. What did the woman want? What had she awakened? There was no turning back now. The last thing Sarah felt was the grip of icy fingers wrapping around her wrist, pulling her into the arms of darkness. The darkness yanked Sarah backward, pulling her away from the fragile barrier of light. She tried to scream, but the sound was smothered by the shadows enveloping her, a suffocating blanket that constricted her throat. "Mommy." Ben's voice shattered through the haze of terror. Panic surged in Sarah's heart. His small figure was illuminated by the dim glow from the doorway, but it flickered like a dying bulb in a storm. She fought against the grasping tendrils of darkness, reaching out for him even as the whispers grew louder. "Help me!" The chorus of voices surrounded them now, swirling like a tempest. It was desperate, pleading, a cacophony that clawed at her mind. "Stay back!" Sarah shouted, panic sharp in her voice. The ground beneath her felt alive, pulsing with an energy that made her bones vibrate. The gaze from the woman outside was intense, focused, as if demanding something from Sarah that she couldn't comprehend. Ben let out a small whimper. She needed to protect him. "Come to me." She extended her arm, desperately willing her legs to move, to close the distance between them. In that heartbeat, the shadows lunged, engulfing her in a cold embrace. It felt like icy fingers curling into her hair, tugging her deeper into the darkness. The weight of despair pressed against her chest. "Mommy." Ben's soft voice broke through the chaos, forcing her to gather the frayed edges of her courage. As she pulled against the darkness, her nails scraped against something rough. The floor? A tangle of roots? Panic fed her adrenaline, fueling her fight. With a furious scream, she tore herself away long enough to step back, her eyes locking on Ben. The shadows recoiled slightly, almost taken aback by her sudden defiance. But it was nothing more than a momentary distraction. The laughter intensified, mocking and malicious. The woman outside was gone, her figure lost in the shadows, but her presence remained palpable, like a menacing storm brewing just beyond the trees. "Ben!" Sarah cried, feeling the panic rise once more, clawing at her throat. She couldn't let him suffer. Just as she lunged to grab him, two dark forms erupted from the woods, blocking her path. They took shape, twisted, contorted figures with hollow eyes that gleamed with insatiable hunger. "Join us," they rasped, their voices a haunting echo. The air thickened, charged with a rancid smell, a mix of rot and despair. "No! Stay away from my son!" Sarah screamed, emotion flooding over her, wrapping her in fierce determination. She pushed through the tendrils clawing at her, one hand reaching for Ben while the other thrust toward the monsters, only to collide with icy resistance. "Help us," the shadows hissed, their forms wavering slightly as if inviting her to join their torment. Her throat grew tighter, fighting against the urge to be a part of them. "Sarah!" Ben cried, his small hand reaching toward her. In that moment, everything froze. Her heart raced not just out of fear but from the clarity that flooded her mind. She was standing at the edge of something monumental, something far beyond redemption. "Find the light or lose him," a voice whispered from the recesses of the darkness, penetrating the fear like a sharp blade. "Ben!" She shouted again, and it felt like a prayer, a plea to a power greater than herself. "You must choose." The shadows wriggled closer, their voices intertwining to form one dreadful chant. "Join us or be lost forever." Her heart hammered violently against her ribcage. She knew she needed to take a step back, to reassert herself, but the darkness began to pulse with an unsettling rhythm, calling, coaxing. Suddenly, a flickering light appeared behind her, an unbidden flicker that shot through the oppressive gloom. The darkness hissed and shrank back, the twisted figures momentarily overwhelmed by the warmth radiating from that distant beam. "Run, Ben!" she yelled, flinging herself toward the light, forcing the shadows to yield, if only for a moment. But before she could reach him, the grasp of the shadows intensified, pulling her toward them with a strength she struggled to comprehend. Her soul trembled with fear, trapped between the urge to flee and the visceral dreadful knowledge that they could take her son if she turned away. And as she clung to that shred of battle, the flickering light pulsed, illuminating something else in the distance, a darker threat lurking just beyond sight that made her blood run cold. What was it? What truth awaited her in that blinding light, and how much further would she have to go to protect Ben from the shadows? With every pulse of her heart, the answer slid closer, drawing the line between choice and doom. The flickering light drew Sarah like a moth, begging her to embrace its warmth. Yet behind her, the shadows howled, writhing with a hunger that felt primal and insatiable. She could see Ben, his eyes wide with fear, but the darkness swallowed the space between them, stretching impossibly long. "Mommy!" he cried again, his voice trembling, a beacon calling her back to reality. She ripped her gaze away from the insatiable figures and the unyielding blackness closing in, fighting every urge to turn back into the shadows. The light pulsed again, a fragile heartbeat in the void, whispering promises of safety. "Stay away. I want to let you have him," she screamed, her voice rising above the clamor of the shadows. The twisted faces lurking just beyond the threshold of the light grew more distinct. Their mouths curled into nightmarish grins, exposing rows of jagged teeth that dripped with darkness. "Join us," they hissed in a haunting unison, and the very air around her thickened, heavy with despair. She stumbled backward, caught in the web of her fear, struggling against the weight tugging her down. Each pulse of the shadows felt like a heartbeat, each whispered word burrowing deep into her mind, like seeds planted in fertile soil. "Mommy, please." Ben's voice cut through the haze, igniting a fire within her. Drawing from that fire, she tightened her grip on the hope that had sparked when the light first touched her. "Ben, I'm coming. Hold on," she shouted, pushing against the shadows with every ounce of strength she could muster. As the darkness recoiled, she felt an unexpected surge of energy flow through her. She took a step forward, breaking free momentarily, and the light brightened, illuminating an expanse of land that felt both familiar and warped. But then, just as she took another step, the dark figures lunged forward, long fingers grasping at her ankles. Coldness flicked against her like 1,000 pinpricks, and she fell to her knees, the grip of despair tightening around her. "Help us," they pleaded again, their voices transforming into a chilling chorus. "Get away." She swatted at the shadows, eyes darting toward Ben, who was still suspended in that sliver of light. He was her lifeline, but he seemed to drift further away, the connection stretching like an ancient cord on the verge of snapping. The darkness wrapped around her, a heavy suffocation that clawed at her throat, pulling her down, deeper and deeper. "You're one of us now," they whispered, their frigid breath brushing against her ear, sending ripples of dread through her. Suddenly, the ground beneath her cracked with a violent roar. The shadows recoiled, a shriek of anger erupting from their tangled forms as the earth split, revealing a chasm that gaped like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. The light shimmered once more, and something surged within her, a fierce determination mixed with the knowledge that love could fight back even in the darkest places. "I will not lose him," she shouted defiantly, scrambling back toward Ben. With a final, desperate push, she lunged for the light, her body a blur of movement. The shadows shrieked in fury, an unholy wind whipping at her as she fought against the darkness, inching closer to her son. But just as she reached out, another figure emerged from the darkness, tall and cloaked, with a face obscured by shadows that seemed to drink in the very light. It raised a hand, and an icy chill enveloped Sarah, freezing her in place. "Your choice is clear: embrace the darkness, or lose everything," it intoned, the voice echoing like thunder through the void. The air thickened with tension, where time seemed to freeze. Sarah's heart raced, a metronome against the stillness. She felt the weight of the moment crushing down upon her, leaving her gasping for breath. What would she choose? And as the shadows closed in, sealing her fate, the only question left was whether she could summon enough light to fend off the gathering storm. If she failed, could she ever bring Ben back from their grasp? The darkness pulsed around Sarah, a living entity that clawed at her with restless fingers. Panic surged within her, the icy grip of fear tightening as the cloaked figure loomed closer, its voice an unholy whisper curling around her mind. "Choose," it hissed, and a violent shudder coursed through Sarah. Part of her wanted to scream at it, to tear away from the suffocating shadowy tendrils, and plunge into the light that felt so near. But another part, the part that questioned if she was already lost, gripped her heart like ice. Ben's terrified face flickered in her mind. She could almost feel the warmth of his presence, the childlike innocence that danced within his eyes. "Hold on!" she screamed again, voice echoing against the thick, dark walls surrounding her. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her, a low rumble that resonated in her chest like a warning bell. The chasm widened, a grotesque grin that seemed to beckon her. The shadows convulsed around her, a whirlpool of despair and longing. "Join us," they begged again, their voices merging into a cacophony that invaded her mind, each phrase dripping with seduction and menace. "Leave the light. Embrace the truth." She fought back against the rising tide of their words, emphasizing her resolve. "I will never join you." Every syllable was like a jab, each word a flicker of the light fighting to break through. She felt, rather than saw, the dark figure recoil. The shadows shimmered briefly, revealing forms that twisted and contorted like reflections in shattered glass. Familiar faces of her past emerged: a neighbor, a best friend from high school, all consumed by darkness, their eyes pleading with something lost within them. Sarah, the figure that looked like her childhood friend, reached out, fingers almost brushing against the edges of the light. "Don't you want to be free? We can be together." The stench of despair hung thick, overwhelming her. It was a suffocating sweetness that made Sarah feel nauseous. "No!" she screamed, forcing herself to break away from their grasping hands that felt like ice against her skin. "You're not real." Her heart raced as she pressed onward, feeling the cold shadows creeping closer, ready to reclaim her resolve. She focused hard on Ben's silhouette, how his spirit glowed against the encroaching night. Then the light pulsed brighter, shock waves of energy cascading through her. With every ounce of her being, she fed the light, desperately willing it to illuminate the shadows further. "I will not let you touch him," she shouted, feeling a fierce power surge within. As the darkness roared in outrage, the ground beneath the chasm cracked deeper. The figures screeched, their faces contorting in agony, blurring into an ever-thickening wall of swirling vapor. Still, Sarah reached for the light, and the barrier between her and Ben ebbed and flowed like a tide. Just as she neared the threshold, the dark figure shot forward, arms stretching out as if to pull her back into the engulfing shadows. "You cannot escape your fate. You've tasted despair. You will not resist." The words slipped through her, talons on her soul. But Sarah, fueled by the urgent cry of her son, surged forward. "I choose love." The moment she uttered those words, the world shifted. The light exploded into brilliance, flooding the chasm with a searing, white glow. A shriek of chaos erupted as shadowy forms dissolved into mist, dissipating into the air like smoke before a flame. And as the darkness began to recede, she felt a moment's hope, the air lightening around her. But then a heavy, echoing voice emerged from the depths. "You've only delayed the inevitable." In the stillness that followed, her heart froze. What could that mean? Had she truly escaped, or was it just the prelude to something worse? The shadows writhed behind her, whispering her name, a haunting murmur that would not be silenced. As she turned to face the lingering darkness, she braced herself, knowing the true battle was far from over. Could the tendrils of despair take root once more, or would she finally break free? The light flickered, a fragile beacon in the vast ocean of darkness. Sarah's heart raced, echoing against the silence but drowned out by whispers snake-like around her. They were relentless, slithering through her thoughts, intent on sowing confusion. "Embrace what you fear." A voice cooed softly, slicing through the remnants of her bravery. She squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the images that flickered like a broken television screen. Each face twisted in despair, each voice pleading for release from this wretched place. Ben's face weaved through the chaos, framing her resolve like a thunderous drumbeat in her chest. She focused on that light, bright and pure, a fragile flicker she vowed to protect. As she opened her eyes, a shockwave of clarity surged, the shadows surrounding her shied back momentarily. They writhed, clawing at one another, heartbeats cloaked in fear. The chasm beneath her yawned wider, and something stirred in its depths, a presence teeming with malice. The air grew heavier, laced with the iron scent of blood and shattered promises. A chill swept through the ground, rattling her bones. "Choose, or be consumed," the dark figure rasped, its voice a dagger to her soul. "I choose to fight," she shouted, surprising herself with the strength that surged in her voice. She could feel it, the very essence of her resolve condensing into a tangible force. The ground trembled in response. Suddenly, every ounce of shadow recoiled, and the figure snarled, revealing its stony features familiar, a reflection of fear made flesh. It festered in her vision, a grotesque parody of the true essence she had fought to release. "Fight all you want," it hissed, slashing through hope like a knife. "This is just the beginning." The walls around her pulsated, alive with dread and despair. Each heartbeat resonated with the memories of those she lost, friends who had battled their own darkness, now dangling like marionettes on twisted string. "Let them go," Sarah cried out, reaching for the shadows that shifted between her and the remnants of Ben. "They don't belong to you." The shadows wailed, reverberating within her, shaking the ground and her very soul. She staggered backward as if the sound physically struck her. But then, fueled by the urgent need to protect Ben, she pushed forward, each step defiant, a battle cry in the silence. "Ben needs me," she shouted, summoning every fragment of love and hope she held. "You can't take that from me." With a guttural roar, the dark figure lunged, snapping its fingers, and the shadows boiled around her. The darkness surged, and she felt like she was being pulled apart, limbs stretched painfully as they reached for her essence, trying to claim her as their own. But something ignited within her, a blinding light that banished the shadows momentarily. "I will not be afraid," she screamed, pushing against their grasp with everything inside her, the love for Ben forming a formidable shield. Yet, as the darkness recoiled again, laughter echoed, sinister and deep, trickling from every shadow that still clung to the walls and choked the air. "You think you've won?" it mocked, every trace of hope draining from her body. Tremors shook her, and she stumbled backward, the light flickering erratically, as if about to extinguish. Sarah knew then that fleeing was not enough. To break free, she had to confront them. But from the chasm came the stark and chilling whisper, "You will never truly be free." The words coiled around her, squeezing her heart until she struggled to breathe. Shadows clawed at her feet, pulling her closer to the abyss as dread seeped into her bones. And suddenly, there it was, an image so vivid it froze her in place. A glimpse of a long-lost friend who had fallen into darkness, a warning wrapped in despair. Sarah blinked, realizing with horror, she might be the next to join the throng of shadows. As the darkness surged once more, hungry for her spirit, she braced herself for the ultimate confrontation. But what awaited her on the other side of that chasm? Would she discover deadly secrets, or uncover the final truth? With the darkness closing in, a chilling intensity surrounded her. In that moment of terror, all she could think was she strong enough to survive? The shadows lunged, wrapping around her in a frigid embrace, pulling her toward the gaping maw of the abyss. Panic clawed at her throat, thick and suffocating. Sarah fought against the darkness, her heart hammering in her chest like a war drum. This could not be the end. Not here. Not now. She had to reach Ben. "Stop. You don't own me," she screamed, voice cracking under the weight of fear. For a moment, the darkness faltered, whispering hesitantly, as if considering her words. But in the next heartbeat, a whisper transformed into a cacophony. The shadows screeched, the agony of lost souls rising around her like a thunderstorm. The wails grew deafening, and Sarah pressed her palms to her ears, feeling the sound vibrate through her bones. "Will you succumb?" The dark figure rasped, slinking closer, its features distorting like a funhouse mirror, familiarity mingled with incomprehensible horror. "Join them. You will find peace in the shadows." The air crackled with static electricity. Sarah's blood ran cold. The faces she recognized twisted in agonized silence, those once full of joy now twisted by despair, trapped in a cycle of torment. "No!" she bellowed again, her voice rising above the tumult. "It's not peace. It's a prison." In that desperate moment, a surge of warmth flickered through her, a pulse of memories with Ben at their center. His laughter echoed like a lighthouse amidst a raging storm, guiding her through the descent into chaos. She could not be the next victim, she would not abandon him, or anyone else they had tried to claim. "Let me go," she shouted, feeling the pull of shadows tighten and then snap as her voice rang with new force. "I am not afraid." The darkness recoiled as if struck. For an instant, she felt the shadows flicker, as if unsure of their grip. But the moment was fleeting, and a deeper anger filled the air, the dark figure's mouth curling into a wicked smile. "Foolish girl," it hissed, "heroism doesn't mean escape. It means embracing your fate." With an arrogant sweep of its arm, the figure summoned even darker tendrils that spiraled upwards, reaching around Sarah like serrated vines. They closed in, jagged edges reflecting lost hopes and untold horrors. "Let him go," she screamed, breaking through the claustrophobic grip of despair. "You can't keep us both." With every ounce of desperation, she surged forward. The shadows struck back, gripping her tighter. But she saw them then, flickers of light amidst the darkness, the souls she fought for, an army of their light surging against the dark. Together. She cried, the word echoing in her mind. Fight with me. We are stronger. The tendrils hesitated and recoiled, and Sarah took her chance. She drew the light deep inside her, pouring every shred of love she held into a brilliant pulse. The brilliance radiated like a beacon, burning through the crackling hysteria, scattering shadows like cockroaches caught in sunlight. As darkness shrank back, she plunged deeper into the chasm, driven by raw instinct. There beyond the raging shadows she could glimpse Ben. Straining, she reached for him, desperate to connect, to anchor him back to her world. Hold on, Ben. She pleaded, her voice breaking. I'm coming. But as she neared, the dark figure surged, slashing through her light with desperate fury. You're too late. It roared, arms outstretched, ready to strike. Your love cannot save you. Just as the shadows spiraled to swallow her whole, the ground beneath trembled violently. The chasm shook, and Sarah felt herself slipping. For one brief second, she sensed the world around her pulsing, alive and potent, a counterforce to despair. Sarah! A voice broke through, raw and real. It was Ben. But from somewhere deep within the fog of shadows, she heard that mocking laughter again, like knives against the skin. Will you sacrifice it all to save him? In the swirl of clashing forces, Sarah's mind raced. She felt her strength waning, the shadows circling, ready to consume her entirely. What am I willing to sacrifice? She whispered. The very air around her thickened, the answer teetering on the edge of her awareness. As she gasped for breath, the shadows prepared for the final strike, darkness creeping closer, threatening to blink out her light forever. Was it too late to fight? Would she discover that true sacrifice lay not in strength, but in facing the darkest truths within? And in that moment of freezing fear, Sarah understood freedom and salvation hinged on one final, desperate choice. The sensation of sliding pulled Sarah further into the void, as if gravity itself had turned traitor. She no longer felt like a person, instead, she was a mere flicker in a consuming storm. Every heartbeat thudded louder than before, drowning out rational thought. The shadows wrapped tighter, hungry and vicious like a pack of wolves closing in on a mortal wound. With a harsh inhale, Sarah felt something shift within her. Not fear, but a flicker of rebellion, igniting a small fire against the chill creeping into her bones. Ben! I'm not leaving you, she shouted into the chaos, determined to have her voice cut through the narrative the darkness spun around her. Silence! The dark figure shouted, the words like fissures cracking the ground beneath them. Its elongated limbs stretched toward her, fingers twisting in a grotesque dance, a mockery of a hand reaching for support. You think you can fight fate? You'll be forgotten just like all the others. A wellspring of memories coursed through her, images of laughter and joy merged with Ben's pained expression, eyes full of longing, yet suddenly dimming. She felt the desperate weight of his trapped spirit, a flickering candle on the verge of extinction. In that split second, fire swelled within her. Not if I can help it. She screamed, gathering every ounce of fervor she had left, channeling it to overpower the darkness. With a force she didn't know existed, Sarah pushed upward. Light surged around her, a brilliant explosion igniting the shadows with an incandescent glow. The darkness screamed, recoiling in panic as if pinched by an unseen force. The cacophony of tortured souls faded, replaced by the sound of gallant whispers urging her on. Fight, Sarah. You are not alone. They surrounded her, those lost souls of light rallying behind her, their warmth igniting a path through the oppressive dark. She lunged forward, reaching for Ben, the desolation in his eyes clear. Hang on. She felt the connection, something real anchoring them. As her fingers almost grazed his, the dark figure coiled around her, tighter than before, claws poised to pull her back into the abyss. You will obey. I will not let you take him. It screeched, and with an audible snap, it struck. A wave of anguish washed over her, reminiscent of cold iron piercing flesh. Let him go. You have no power here. She shouted, powered by the righteous fury of 1,000 souls echoing behind her. It was a tug of war, shadows tugging, light pulling back. She could almost taste the bitterness of defeat in the air. It felt thick and stifling, but Sarah's resolve hardened. She closed her eyes, picturing all she loved, all that was worth fighting for. Together. We can fight. Her voice rose louder, an unyielding decree that reverberated off the walls of this hellish realm. The heat of the light intensified, and she pressed forward, all-encompassing brightness igniting everything it touched. But as she reached the goal, a shudder ran through the ground, a warning bell echoing in her bones. A crack split the dark figure's facade. You're stronger than I thought, it hissed, a flicker of fear dancing across its contorted features. But this isn't over. The shadow began to writhe, morphing into a cyclone of despair, inching closer, threatening everything. Sarah fought through, but behind Ben, another presence stirred, an ethereal figure clothed in whispers, dread sinking in and pulling at her already fraying strength. Just then, a roar erupted from the darkness, fierce and oppressive. You can't escape. You belong to me. As the walls of the abyss trembled, Sarah felt herself lifted, hovering between realms, caught in a dizzying dance of fear and hope. But within the chaos, a singular thought flickered, urgent and raw. What would she sacrifice? What was truly worth fighting for? And in that moment of frantic clarity, as the darkness coiled tighter, Sarah faced the chilling truth. Could she confront this horror alone? Or would she see Ben become another echo lost in despair? The air crackled again, and she braced for impact. Uncertainty clawed at her, whispering promises of anguish. Yet still, what lay beyond the veil of shadow? Would she dare reveal the darkest truth? The shadows convulsed, threatening to pull Sarah deeper into their suffocating grasp. All she could think about was Ben, standing in precarious light, his innocence a beacon in the swirling shadows. With a desperate lunge, she reached out her hand but felt the pit of dread in her stomach widen. Hold on, Ben. I'm coming. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribcage as fear and determination ignited within her. The dark figure surged, clawing madly with deep shadows, trying to claw Sarah back into despair. But she wouldn't let it win. Not now. Not ever. Summoning every fragment of resolve she had left, Sarah pushed against the darkness. You don't own me. You don't own him. Each word fueled a shimmering warmth inside her, a light that danced defiantly against the shadows. Then she felt it, an almost tangible connection to the flickering light surrounding Ben. Together. We will fight. She shouted, reaching for him, feeling as if they were fused by a bright thread of hope. But those dark claws wrapped tightly around her limbs. The shadows hissed, join us. Embrace your destiny. With a fierce scream, Sarah pushed through. I reject your destiny. I choose love. A radiant force erupted from her heart, flooding the darkness with blinding light, casting shadows into retreat. It screamed in fury, shaking the very ground as if it had been struck like thunder. No! It roared, but Sarah pressed forward, ignoring the cold, icy tendrils grasping for her. All that mattered was Ben. The pulsating light surrounded them like an unbreakable armory, dissipating the dark forms swirling around her. Ben, hold on to me. She cried, feeling the connection weaving tighter. I'm here, Mommy. Ben's voice surged with vigor. The light followed his call, radiating from within. As Sarah took a step closer to him, she felt the shadows recoil, fading at the edge of the warmth they created. Then came the dark figure's final roar, echoing and relentless. You cannot win. You will always return. It lunged forward, desperate, grasping, as the cocoon of light drew closer. But Sarah felt something shift in her. Not this time, she declared boldly, drawing strength from every moment of love and happiness she had shared with Ben. With the darkness encroaching, Sarah gathered it all, propelling her emotions into the reeling shadows. Love conquers all. She shouted, feeling the vibrations of her voice ripple through the air. The shadows hesitated and then shrieked, their cries rolling like thunder through the night. Suddenly, with a surge of power, she reached Ben. Their fingers brushed against one another. The touch ignited an explosion of light that shattered the darkness into fragments, sending a shockwave through the shadowy abyss. Together. At that moment, they joined, the bond between mother and son radiating warmth that pushed back against the horrifying talons reaching toward them. The shadows shrieked and writhed, dissolving into wisps of black smoke under the force of their combined love. Light engulfed everything, a searing brilliance that rendered darkness non-existent. With a final scream, the dark figure, shuddered and collapsed under the weight of light, vanished into the nothingness it had once commanded. As the remaining shadows collapsed in on themselves, Sarah and Ben stood in a sanctuary of light, a safe haven. Everything was silent, suddenly serene. And then the sun broke through the horizon, illuminating the world in golden hues. Sarah blinked, feeling the ground solid beneath her feet. She looked down at Ben. His eyes sparkled with relief. "We did it!" he shouted, laughter bubbling up like the morning dew on grass. "Yes, we did," Sarah said, laughing through her own tears. Relief washed over her, dissolving the tension that had gripped her for so long. They were free. The weight of the past lifted, and in its place, hope and light filled the void. Sarah swept Ben into her arms, cradling him close. "No more shadows. We won to let them back in." As they turned to walk away from the remnants of darkness, the echoes of lost souls faded into the breeze, carried away by the new dawn they had fought for. A sense of peace settled over Briar Hollow, and perhaps, a chance for its unburdened past to finally rest. They reached their home, the sky painted with the soft pastels of morning light. They stepped inside, the door creaking open to reveal a room that felt transformed. Bright sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating every corner, casting shadows of warmth instead of dread. Sarah smiled down at Ben, his face lighting up with innocence. "Let us make breakfast," she suggested, feeling light-hearted and hopeful. "Can we make pancakes?" he asked, bouncing on his little feet. "Of course. Pancakes it is." As she turned on the stove, life returned to its rhythm, and a new horizon emerged in the peaceful town of Briar Hollow. What had once been a haunting ground for lost souls became a sanctuary of light, love, and second chances. Sarah squeezed Ben tightly. They defaced the darkness, and together they had come out triumphant, forging an enduring bond stronger than any shadow. And as the aroma of pancakes wafted through the air, Sarah couldn't help but feel grateful. Grateful for the chance to carve out a brighter future, together. But they both knew the scars of their journey would remain a reminder of the strength that pulled them from darkness into the light. As they laughed and shared breakfast, Sarah couldn't shake her sense of urgency. She reached for her phone, fully aware that the journey of sharing their story had just begun. "Hey everyone," she said to the camera, gathering her thoughts. "You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. We fought the darkness, and I can't wait to share the lessons we learned. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. It helps more than you can imagine." Her heart raced with excitement. "And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how we can turn the dark into light, or even share your own stories. It's powerful. Finally, instantly share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. They can't miss this. Let us light up the world together." And with that, under the gentle morning sun, Sarah felt a renewed spirit unfold, a promise that they would thrive, protecting their love and sharing their journey towards brighter days.